What is new? How has the process been treating you, and what have you been like? How's it been? How's the process been?
I think it's good.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be hard to tell, particularly with the children running sort of interference noise in the background.
Mhm.
I was thinking about that. I filled out the form that you sent late, just like 15 minutes ago or something like that. And I was going, how do I feel? How do I feel? It's almost hard to tell because there's been up days, there's been down days. But with
Mhm.
the practice itself, I've been doing what you suggested, which is sort of getting settled and then inviting in just those feelings so that
Mhm.
I can then feel them. And I mean, today was a really good one of those sessions because yesterday had quite a lot of triggers to it that I didn't react to very well. So I was able to really get that feeling and sort of
Mhm.
ground myself. And I mean, I know it worked because like my heart rate was like 20, 30 beats a minute more than it usually is when I'm meditating. So it's like I was really feeling it.
Yeah, yeah.
So
It
yeah, I mean,
will.
we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, there's been a couple times when I've been able to take the breath and stop and feel the feet and then move forward from that.
Mhm.
So yeah, like everything, it's a work in progress, but I feel like it's a really useful tool for the arsenal just to have, like, to be able to
Yeah.
pair it with my current meditation, like the waking up app, do it by itself. Like I've been alternating back and forth of sitting, doing the breath and the feet, and then doing
Mhm.
the regular meditation that I do.
Mhm.
And then someday I'll do just the full on, like, okay, invite the feelings in, sit with it. So yeah, it's nice to have something that doesn't feel like it takes away from my current meditation practice. It's
Mhm.
sort of a supplementary to that because everything else I've tried has sort of been like, it's one or the other.
Mhm.
Whereas this is just like so personal feeling, body that, yeah, it really works together.
Yeah, I think what we'll find is that the outside triggers are going to change day to day. Some days the kids will just be complete maniacs that will just push you over the edge because they'll be that one spot and they'll be there poking at that one spot all
Hmm.
day long. And definitely over time you'll find more resilience in that spot. But what's probably most important as a starting point is that when that spot gets triggered, this works as a tool to help you to calm it down and recenter yourself.
Hmm.
Um, and when that when the process is working, what you'll find is sometimes one breath, two breaths, five breaths will be enough, and other times it'll have been a particularly bad day, and you'll need to go sit for 10 minutes and really like let it settle in, and the use of the oil and the herbs will be even that much more important. Um, but as that pathway gets developed in the brain, you'll be able to get those results more quickly each time. But it can be challenging to quantify that because the variables are so variable, right? The way the kids are, how you slept the night before, there's all these variables that
Hmm.
change the intensity each day or each moment that it occurs. And we're never really looking for our humanness to go away or the kids' humanness to go away. They'll just be jerks some days, and some days they'll be angels, and that's just the nature of life. And I had this discussion with another client as well. It's that this isn't really it is a very good practice to do on a regular basis to develop that hardwire capacity. But once that capacity is developed, it's really more designed as something that you drop in throughout the day
Hmm.
as needed to help you kind of stay in flow and come back into flow if you get triggered, rather than it being like your daily meditation per se.
Right.
It should be done for a while as your daily meditation to just sort of get your training wheels developed or to get that pathway developed. But then the real work and the beauty of it is in that day-to-day flow when you can just draw upon it as needed.
Right.
Um, yeah, that's really in my experience, that's really where it shines. And then if you want to do more meditation to cultivate light or to cultivate certain other feelings, then you do other sort of more meditation practices. And this practice, when we do it regularly, is helping us develop the capacity to disentangle from the things that kind of haunt us. And that's where then when you know the thing that is your trigger, you go and you do the meditation, trying to recreate some of those sensations and learning to sit with them. So that type of emotion doesn't have as much power over you in the process. Right?
Yeah, I think that's going to be really helpful, particularly being able to access like recent things that happened. It just seemed like super powerful today. And it was almost tough because it was like, okay, come back. But then I don't know, it just felt like it was a useful thing to be doing.
How did it change your experience as you did it?
So I've been doing this the last probably 2 or 3 times this week when I've been doing this. I sort of feel like my body or my consciousness, as it were fairly expansive. And I've been able to invite the anger particularly.
Good.
And it almost to me seems like it's, I don't know, a little spark, like a fly, like something that's got energy, but it's got all this space to move. And it's going this way and this way and this way. And I feel it in my chest. But like before, that would have just been like, it's everything. It's taking up every single like square inch of my body. And the last week or so, as I've been doing this, it's like, oh, wow, like I've got this space to invite it in and go crazy, but like there's some space. So yeah, that definitely changed the relationship to it. And I think I would like to keep going on that route once in a while, particularly as you described it, to sort of sit with that. But yeah, it went from feeling like the entire body was just overwhelmed completely to being like, oh, I can watch it fly now. It's like, it's still like crazy radioactive and horrible, but like I can see
it's smaller.
Oh, it's
and you were bigger.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is not, I mean, yesterday, it was just like the worst day yesterday with kids. It was just absolutely brutal. Summer cannot end soon enough, which is something I never thought I would say, but yeah, anyway. Yeah, and it was just like, was doing all this well, and then just end of the day was just triggered and I couldn't get there in time. And I got back really quickly, which I think is also very important. As it come down from that. But yeah, it was just one of those things that, okay, now it's happened. I can immediately see where I wish it was different and then sit with that and then feel bad about that healthily, I think. But yeah, it's just like, it's starting to come, this sort of body somatic experience of anger here, self here, space, feeling, feet on the ground, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's, I feel it developing something.
Good. I think that really is the key of the journey, because in the Taoist paradigm, we don't want to take away your right to get angry by things, about things, or scared by things, or irritated by things, or hopeful for things. We don't want to take away that humanness. And at the same time, we don't want our humanness to be a slave driver to us, right? We want to feel our emotions. We want to be the creatures that we are, but we don't want to be a slave to our emotional responses. And the only way we can not be a slave to them is if we can sit with them and have conversation with them. What's really going on here? Why is this coming up? And can our ego be small enough to let go of some of our attachments or thought patterns that come in sort of traumatically or sociologically programmed, or whatever sort of reason that they're there. And so this practice is really that idea where we can, it's like when they talk about the idea that between the trigger and the reaction, there's a space for a pause. And when the trigger is really big, when the fly is really big and it takes over the entire person, there's no space for a pause. But as it gets smaller and smaller, we can be like, oh, there's something there, and it's really a radioactive, crazy, toxic fly, but it's also just a fly, it's not me. There is that separation, and that really is the key, because without that, we can't really begin the process of breaking free from it, because it just devours us every time we see it. And there will be days that the fly is larger, and there will be days that the fly is smaller. And there will be that if you continue with the practice, all the flies will get smaller and smaller.
Right.
Because you're developing a neurological pathway of resilience or fortitude that just says, I don't care what comes at me. I know this practice will help me to recenter quickly. And once we've experienced that multiple times, we start to have some confidence in the process. Mm-hmm. It starts to feel like, oh, this sucks. But you know what? Even though it sucks, I know I can do it. It's like a hard workout. You know that you've got a certain more distance to run or a certain number of more reps of lifting, but you also, and you know it's going to suck, but you also have that intrinsic faith in your capacity to complete whatever cycle of exercise that you're doing. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's really the key foundationally, right? When you did the meditation yesterday, did you have the tea with it as well?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And do you still notice that helps you to?
Yeah, it was really good today, and I noticed, like, in the back of my head, I knew we were doing this call, so maybe it was, I don't know, subconscious, but like it really just like settled this morning, particularly. Okay. Like the last week it was good, but today was just like, oh, settled. So yeah, I'm starting to, I think, get the expectation of the calm with it as well. And so now, like, I know the taste is the same, but it's not as bitter as it was, or it's not as new as it was. So it sort of helps to trigger that, okay, give yourself the 10 minutes, give yourself 20 minutes, whatever it's going to be. And just, I can worry about everything I'm thinking about, because I go like, oh, I need to know this now. So I need to think about it now because I might forget. And I go, no, but if you're the person who thinks about it now, you're the person in 10 minutes who will still have a brain working the same way to think about it then. So just let it go. So that like 5-minute period or 10-minute period of drinking the tea has been really good to just like, okay, get all those crazy monkey mind thoughts out of there, put it aside, know you're going to come back to it, and then ease into it, which, yeah, I really enjoy doing that.
Okay, good. Yeah. You can amplify that benefit by feeling your feet while you're drinking the tea. So you're doing 2 points between the tea and your feet. So you can incorporate that as part of the process.
Cool.
Or you can taste the tea, but then also feel literally the heat of the tea inside your body.
Right. Yeah, I think I need to incorporate that. That's a good idea.
It's just ways we can bring more to it. And your experience of the flavor changing is also pretty common. And at least what I've noticed in myself is that the more I am sort of suffering my agitations, the more I taste the bitterness. The more I'm willing to kind of sit with it, somehow it just doesn't taste as bitter. It's an interesting dynamic, and it makes sense because so much of our sensory experience is based on our willingness to engage with something. And so why wouldn't taste also change, right? What we see changes, what we feel changes. It's all contextual. So it makes sense that the flavor would change a little bit. Sure, you could have gotten a little more of this granule or a little bit more of that granule, but realistically, it's probably more an internal thing than an external. And I like that personally as a reminder, oh, what I bring to the equation actually changes the reality that I experience. Yes. And it's a little reminder when I take that sip of tea and I'm like, it tastes different. It gives me pause to think, okay, what's going on different inside of me? So it becomes an aid in sort of like that, something's going on.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. And that's something I noticed that I don't notice enough, which is to start drinking it and then like feel the sensations. And I'll get the warmth sometimes, but like the feet as well. I'll do that tomorrow and see how that goes.
It's a nice stepping stone, just because the goal of this practice is to bring it everywhere. So it's like, oh, if I can do it while I'm, it's like if you're tasting wine or you're drinking whiskey and you're trying to get all the flavors out of it, or you're tasting some food, it's like the more presence we can bring to something, to anything we do, it just wires that practice of being present fully, which then cascades into so many different things. And it gets us to just slow down out of the fight, flight, freeze response pattern that we're buzzing in most of the time. So if I can be mindful when I'm writing a word, or I can be mindful when I'm drinking a cup of coffee or drinking my tea, or doing it, the more we do it, the better.
Yeah. So I almost feel like if I'm able to use the feet on the ground trigger or loop or something, and loop that with anything else, whether it's the breath or drinking or eating or whatever, I feel as though having those 2 points would probably be a way to sort of increase moment to moment awareness. Like I'm pretty good at dropping into, okay, need to wake up, just like settle, get the consciousness back in line. But I feel like adding that foot presence is probably a way to just make it come to mind more frequently. And so, I mean, of course, you first have to settle, okay, and now I have to notice the feet. But I think once that happens, like it's just, to me, with the breath particularly in these hard things, it's like, oh, feet, oh, breath, oh, right. So I think that like the more you can apply that to other things, perhaps that would also just increase general awareness and general space in the mind and body.
Yeah.
Is that something that you've noticed with other things as well?
It very much is, because, you know, if we think of neurological pathways like a highway, our old patterns are like these super highways that are 10 lanes across, double stacked with a ton of traffic, right? And what we're trying to develop are these simpler pathways, or more peaceful pathways, which is currently more of a tiny bumpy trail. But over the course of a month, that trail starts to get widened, and maybe you put some tiles down, eventually there's some concrete, then it becomes its own highway. And the double-sided benefit is that what was the superhighway starts to fall into disrepair. Because you're not driving on it so much, it begins to break down while this one is beginning to be built up. And so you're getting a twofold benefit, that you tend to just naturally be on this path more often. And you tend, when you get triggered on this path, you're like, wait a minute, this isn't the road I'm supposed to be on. And you see it right away because you're familiar with the other one. And one way to think of that is that the neural pathways in the brain just get more developed through habituation, through habitual practice, like anything, right? We get a certain degree of motor memory or muscle memory or neurological hardwiring. And it really can reach the space where our first reaction is to simply pause and take a breath, feel our feet on the ground. We're still triggered, but the trigger is now the small fly. We feel it there, and I can be in my triggered state, feeling my anger and still talking to you, because that doesn't have to speak. My heart can speak, irregardless of the buzzing of the fly around. I can still stay connected to my heart center as I communicate with you, even though there is the storm of emotion going on. It doesn't take me out of my heart center. And that's like the next layer of work, when we invite the emotions in, and you feel that anger and you see the fly. You want to sort of have that separation from that agitation, and then pose the question of, what is it that I'm really feeling underneath this? Why am I reacting in the way that I'm reacting? Right? Why am I angry? Why is this world that's unfolding right now, why is it wrong? Because really you're only angry because you have some judgment over the situation, because you would like it to be different. Totally understandable, and nothing wrong for wanting the difference. We just want to catch and touch the vulnerability or the softness that is there underneath. What is it that I'm feeling that I'm vulnerable about, that I'm hence judging this other thing? And it's pulling me out of my softness or out of my love, because in theory, we would say it's pretty clear that no matter what, you want to give your children love. But there will be those times that you want to strangle them, right? I mean, it's human nature. I don't know if I said this before, my best friend has a bumper sticker that says, proud parent of some amazing kids that are also assholes. You know? And I just spent the day at the zoo with them yesterday, his 3 kids, and they're amazing. And they're also assholes sometimes, but you know, they're 5 and 8. They're just insane and wonderful and perfect. But just because they're wonderful and perfect, and just because you theoretically want and authentically want to give them love all the time, doesn't mean they're not going to do things that trigger you. Just like with Natalie or whatever, like you two can love each other, but doesn't mean you're not going to trigger each other because you're human, right? We hang out enough. We can be human. We can be friends. We can be friendly. We can hang out, but doesn't mean we won't also ultimately do certain things that irritate each other because we're just different humans. And so what we want is to be able to catch that irritation, see it for the small thing that it is, hold the sensation of it, the agitation that's in our body, let the body process some of that energy via grounding, via the breath, via heaven and earth. So we have this sort of dual polarity for some of that energy to dissipate. But with the ultimate goal being that you're able to return back to that soft part of your heart that wants to give your kids love. So you can almost coexist in your anger and your love, and the anger doesn't take it over. You're like, wow, I'm really angry and I'm going to give my kids a hug right now. It doesn't have to run the show, right? That's the sort of goal of the process. When you can do that, then that works as a way to keep us operating in more of a heartfelt center, to use the sort of Buddhist language for that, is that I can come to everything with love. I still have boundaries. I still set healthy space for myself. And when something creates anger in me, I'm able to establish my boundary and control the situation, but I'm able to do it from a space of feeling like this is coming from my space of love rather than my reactivity.
Right.
And that's basically what these types of practices help us to create, where if you have a practice that's more about visualizing light or like metta practices or those sorts of things, they just cultivate the strength of that heartfelt space, but they don't necessarily create the way to disentangle from the triggers.
Right.
We need both because they're just different sets of tools that we want to cultivate. So as you finish up the month and sort of continue down practicing that, something else you may want to incorporate, which we talked about before, will be like visualizing some of the light and doing the part that cultivates the sort of softer, compassionate, loving part of self, and then integrating, going back and forth between the disentangling and the nurturing stuff.
Do you have suggestions that you would recommend for doing the thing to get some sort of semblance of love? Because I feel as though with myself, that's something that like, I just don't even know how to do, like the care and the love and outward compassion. I don't know where it is in my body. Like I feel as though it's just non-existent. And so that's part of what I'm looking forward to. And then planning, I'm doing a couple of retreats specifically to work on that. And I like to find it, but I mean, I've got really good at doing the disentangling thing compared to where I was, but I still don't know what's on the other side. So I've gone from like -100 on the angry all the time scale to right perfectly in the middle, but never able to get across to the loving side of the scale. Unless it's like really bad and I feel horrible for not being like that. And then I have this horrible like outward sorrow of love. And that's sort of not where I need to be. So yeah, is there anything that you would suggest to look into for incorporating that?
Yeah, there are a few things that ways that you can kind of approach it. And part of that requires some flexibility of what we define as love. The love you feel as you say your wedding vows, the love you feel as you see your children being born, the love you feel when you see a redwood or a sequoia tree or the ocean or a mountain, are all different sort of forms of love. And part of the process is defining what love is to you, getting to know that. And there'll be many different manifestations of it. So you want to start to broaden your definition of love, or understand how broad your definition of love is, right? Really get to know how love shows up for you, because you may show love or feel love in certain situations that you're feeling it. It's just not pinging your radar. And so sometimes mind mapping that stuff can be really helpful, because you can start to label it out and start to say like, oh, well, this is where I feel love this way and I feel love that way. But it never really comes in because you're not really consciously aware that that's one of the ways you experience it. Classically speaking, we can gaze at religious figures, spiritual figures, Mother Mary, Kuan Yin, people like that, that represent the concept of love and trying to feel the love of a parent for their child, represented by the mother to the child, that sort of concept. And so you can just keep tapping into that sort of parental feeling. You can think of the tapping into the idea of your wedding vows. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you can do the same with nature. If there's certain animals that you love, or certain trees or sides of nature that you love that you're really grateful for, is you can go into gratitude around those things and just hang out as a neurological pathway, just over and over again, feeling that gratitude, because the gratitude kickstarts this process of feeling love in a general sense. We can physicalize our love as a physical sensation. So we think of like the intimacy and oxytocin kick of intimacy post-orgasm, or just cuddling with your partner and just feeling that intimacy and feeling the gratitude and the waves of physical sensation that come through our body. That would be more of a physical approach to feeling that. And then within the tradition that I study, there's a lot of visualization of light. Usually a golden light or a white light, and immersing yourself in that light, much like you hear of, like, as you're having a near-death experience, you see the light and you go towards the light. That light represents the unconditional love of divinity, or the grace of divinity. And by visualizing that, literally practices where you gaze at a candle, and then you close your eyes, you continue to see the light, and you just keep visualizing that light until it begins to enfold you. And your practice is literally a meditation where you're just simply sitting in the light. You're absorbing that light into your body. And what ends up happening is you start to cultivate a sense of light that emanates from you, as you begin to experience the presence of divinity, the presence of grace around you all the time. So it's not a cognitive, let me think about what it means to love. I'm not trying to understand it in my mind. I'm just experiencing it as a physical sensation. And I have some guided meditations that you can do for that process. And there are also herbal teas that help that process the same way that people might use microdosing as a way to support that process. So that's all it's trying to do. If you've ever done psychedelics, you're opening up into this big grand light that have beautiful colors and beautiful shades, and you're just wanting to not be reliant on a substance for that. You're wanting to cultivate that pathway within yourself so you can create your own hallucinations, if you will, while you're doing your meditation. And that would be a very good pairing, is to do the sort of 2-point awareness and do some light visualization, and then bring it into your life, so that when you're out with the kids and they're triggered, you do the 2-point awareness in those points, but you also bring the light cultivation into the relationship with Natalie, and you two spend time connecting and growing that part that way as well. Because if you can approach it from a couple different spaces, again, we're just more likely to succeed. You'll see, like, you'll experience it here, and suddenly when you make the connection and you feel how they're the same, then it settles that much more deeply into your system.
Right.
Okay. So that would be the next phase, I would say. And I'm glad that it's easy enough to send you something to work with, and we can explore that.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions that I can answer for you about the process?
I don't think so. I mean, I feel pretty comfortable sitting and doing
Mm-hmm.
2-point, having tea and the oil. I mean, everything's sort of good. Yeah.
Okay.
I appreciate being able to like do this because it sort of helps, like I say, it solidifies it and gets different connections and go, oh yeah, these things can connect. So yeah, these are really helpful too, just the calls, because you don't know really what's going to go on, what you're going to talk about, but suddenly it's like, oh yeah, right. So yeah, thank you for your time and for all the help.
Oh no, I'm glad it's helpful. And I love seeing how it's unfolding for you. It helps me to kind of see, like, I have my experience with my patients, but this is a very different venue for trying to share the practices. So it's really helpful for me to see where the overlaps are, and to sort of reaffirm what that process is like. And you're obviously very self-motivated, so it's easy for you to be motivated to do the practices. So you're a great candidate for it. And it will make it easier to send you something, have you do it, and then follow up however many weeks later and just let you kind of like dive into it, because you'll actually dive into it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah. Otherwise it doesn't work. So, okay. Well, what I will do is, I will shoot you an email with some, like a little summary and some suggestions. You still have probably a good amount of the tea left, I imagine.
Yeah.
So keep doing that process, and then we will just expand it and add one more layer to it.
Cool.
Yeah? Sound good?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you so much for all your help.
Yes.
I will get Natalie.
Okay.
Assuming she's booked next, I presume.
Yes, she is.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. And we'll just be in touch via email and kind of play it by ear from there.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right. Take
Thanks.
care.
Okay. Cheers.